With a net worth of between $1 and $1.5 million, Dr. Paul leaves behind more than just money. He also leaves behind a memory that makes his family cry. Many people love Dr. Paul because he cares so much about animals, especially horses. He became rich through years of hard work, love, and suffering. His wealth, though, means more than just success. It's the result of a lot of hard things in his life, like the sad death of his grandson. In this talk, we will talk about the amazing wealth that Dr. Paul leaves behind, which will last for generations. Dr. John Paul's life is full of hard work and love for animals. Since he grew up on a dairy farm, he was always around animals. He became interested in veterinary care while living on this farm, which had green pastures and a simple way of life. He was interested in the health of farm animals as a child and often helped take care of them. This early event made him want to learn more about animal health, which led to a job in veterinary care that he will have for the rest of his life. There wasn't much work available in the Netherlands after the war, but Dr. Paul didn't give up on his dream. He also studied veterinary science at Utrecht University, which is known around the world as one of the best veterinary medicine schools. During his time here, he gained valuable experience and information that helped him reach his goal. Veterinary medicine wasn't just Dr. Paul's job, it was his calling and his love. The Netherlands, on the other hand, couldn't stop his growing goals. In the 1970s, Dr. Paul made the brave choice to move to the United States after meeting Diane, who would become his wife. They moved to Michigan and he started working at a vet clinic there. This began a new part of his life that would be full of difficulties. It wasn't easy for him to get used to a new society while also building his career. He worked hard and cared about animals, though, and quickly became known as a dedicated doctor. He was in charge of a wide range of cases, from regular checkups to emergency farm calls. He often worked late into the night to take care of his patients. But the long hours were hard on them. Diane would often wait by the window with their young children while he came back from a late farm visit. Even though he loved his job, it was hard for him to miss family meals, school events, and bedtime stories. These giving ups were what it took to make things better for his family in the future. Dr. Paul worked hard for many years and saved money. In 1981, he opened Paul Veterinary Services in Weidman, Michigan, with the help of his wife, Diane. Dr. Paul used to work out of a small building and was ready to go long distances to help animals in the country. It was rough in the beginning, mostly because of money issues and trouble setting up the business. They were raising their children, so Diane took care of all the financial parts of the clinic and the housework while Dr. Paul worked hard to reach his goals. His hard work and willingness to get his hands dirty paid off in the end. More people joined the practice as word spread about how skilled and dedicated this man was. As a rural veterinary surgeon, it was hard to run a clinic because of the long hours, changing weather, and having to deal with big cows in places that were not very connected. Dr. Paul, on the other hand, was very determined and built a strong base for his future work. Animal health services in rural places often have to deal with difficult working conditions, which helped Dr. Paul. He was tough and able to work with animals and understand how they feel because he grew up on a farm in Holland. Still, his schooling as a veterinarian taught him how to treat and prevent different illnesses. Even though he missed time with his family, he knew that what he was doing was best for them in the long run. Dr. Paul thinks that pets' health is just as important as our own. He stresses how important it is for both the pet and the person to get enough exercise and eat the right food. He explains how important it is to keep a dog's weight in check because being overweight can cause health problems like diabetes in older dogs. Cats might not have the same issues, but some cats can still get fat from being lazy. To make sure that as many kids as possible can grow up with pets, Dr. Paul's main point is that pet care should be sensible and cheap for families. As the years went by, Paul Veterinary Services slowly grew into a successful business. Many people from all over the country came to Paul for help because he was so good at what he did and cared about others. Because he was more than just a vet for pets, he kept good ties with farmers and people who had pets. People liked how he dealt with his clients' animals professionally and without any nonsense. They also liked how dedicated he was to his job. As the business grew, so did Dr. Paul's reach and success with people who needed dental care. Many people paid him a lot of money because he was willing to take on tough situations that other lawyers would have rather not. People who knew him trusted him. Still, he had to pay the final price in order to be successful at work. He was often late for important events in his kids' lives, and Diane got angry because she had to take care of the family most of the time. Making those kinds of adjustments was a big burden. He didn't want to give up on his tasks, though. Dr. Paul did well as a veterinarian, but life had even bigger shocks in store for him. He had a lot more to say than just how hard it was to run a rural business. He was about to start a new story that would make him famous and rich around the world. The doctor from Michigan became famous all over the world thanks to a TV show that started it all. How did Dr. Paul become a TV star, though? A great opportunity knocked on the door of Paul Veterinary Services by chance in 2011. At first, it was just one small veterinary clinic in a rural part of Michigan, getting ready to become a famous reality TV show. Charles Paul, Dr. Paul's son, was the most important person in this change. He thought it would be a good idea to turn his father's writing into a series that would be about both the medical business and the real life of farming in the country. Charles had seen how much his father cared about animals and thought it was strange that he was the only one running the clinic that day. He felt that certain events, like the time he had to rush at midnight to help the animals in trouble and his friendship with the people who went by the name Dr. Paul, could be told. Growing up in a rural area of Michigan taught him how hard it is to run a farm and take care of pets, but Ella gave him the tools he needed to tell this story. Charles came up with the idea of reality shows because he wanted to carry on his father's work. The idea was easy to grasp. You could follow Dr. Paul around as he did house calls and surgeries and treated horses, cows, and other animals to help cats and dogs with their problems. He thought that people would like his father's straight style and his real interest in animals. He was right. It took Joe a while to tell different networks about the plan. Finally, National Geographic Wild was interested in the show, so the amazing Dr. Paul showed up. The show has been popular with viewers ever since it first aired. It wasn't just about how the animals were treated and cared for. Dr. Paul wrote a moving story about life in the country that was driven by his love and dedication. People who liked realistic comedies about veterinarians would enjoy this show. It didn't sugarcoat the job or the grime that comes with it every day. From one place, the public could see both Dr. Paul's professional successes and the personal costs that came with his job. When the show first started, a lot of people watched the incredible Dr. Paul. A lot of people listened to the radio and watched TV to see and hear Dr. Paul do all kinds of surgeries, even helping cows give birth in the middle of the night. But people didn't just want to see the medical cases, they also liked Dr. Paul because he was friendly and funny. A real love for animals and the people who take care of them. Off-screen, the start of the show gave the Paul family a way to make money after years of hard work and hardship. There were also a lot of hours spent working and being away from family and friends while focusing on a job. An amazing Dr. Paul became famous in America and other parts of the world while he was running. He is now famous as a vet and TV host. One thing that made the incredible Dr. Paul different from other American reality shows was that it didn't add too much drama. Real people, real animals, and real events were the focus. People really connected with Dr. Paul's friendly personality and the show's touching and moving stories. The show was about more than just animals, it also showed the people and towns that Dr. Paul helped. People saw him as a friend they could trust who really cared about the health of both animals and their owners. A lot of interesting stories have been on the show over the years, but two stand out as especially strange. In one case, Dr. Paul treated a horse that had terrible stomach pain and found that it had been eating car tires. The horse had to go through a very painful operation to save its life. In a different strange case, a cow started to crave dirt and gravel, which caused stomach problems. Dr. Paul found that the cow's strange hunger was caused by a lack of minerals, which he fixed with a complicated surgery. These cases put Dr. Paul's medical skills to the test and showed how unpredictable and difficult it can be to work with farm animal medicines. The show's popularity made Dr. Paul famous and gave him a stable income. It helped him make a lot more money because it was featured on National Geographic Wild. His veterinary business in rural Michigan continued to help people, and the extra money helped Dr. Paul make sure that his family would have a good future. He was proud of his financial success, especially since he had trouble managing work and family in the past. Even though he was rich, Dr. Paul was still committed to his job and often worked long hours to make sure animals got the care they needed. The show's money became another success story because it protected the future of Dr. Paul's family for generations. As the show went on for season after season, his success let him do something for his family that he had never thought possible. People in his family were not only moved by the moving scenes on the show, but they were also thankful for what Dr. Paul made with his heart, love for animals, and service to the community. Do you agree or disagree with Dr. Paul's rise to fame on TV? Before he became famous through movies, Dr. Paul made most of his money from his veterinary practice. In 1981, which he set up, over 20,000 people went to the clinic, which served people who lived on farms in rural areas. Even after he became famous around the world, Paul continued to make money by running Paul Veterinary Services on a daily basis. However, Dr. Paul never left his practice, even though he became rich from TV. He stayed involved and often gave up his own time to make sure the animals got the care they needed. His unwavering commitment kept the business making money and showed how much he cared about his family and community. Dr. Paul was able to build a successful veterinary business, but the incredible Dr. Paul show, which came out in 2011, was his big break financially. A lot of people watched the show, and he was said to get paid between $30,000 and $40,000 for each episode. However, this amount has gone up recently. It has been on for 24 seasons and has more than 240 episodes. The show is worth a lot of money. It also gave them a chance to find other ways to make money, like selling commercial and personal appearances and talks.doctor. Paul didn't try to end his fame. Instead, he built it up by writing a memoir called Never Turn Your Back on an Angus Cow. In it, he talked more about his life and trip from the Netherlands to America to becoming a famous veterinarian. Of course, this helped him make money because the book became a big hit. Besides this, he worked with animal care brands and became an ambassador for pet food, veterinary supplies, and grooming goods. These partnerships helped him make money and made him even more well-known as an expert in animal care. For example, they put their extra money into investments, while Dr. Paul is known to have interests in real estate. He lives in Weidman, Michigan, on a big piece of land that has a farm on it. He takes care of a lot of animals and speculates. Even though he is rich, Dr. Paul lives a simple life. The only thing he really enjoys is getting a personal tour of the yard where cars like a 1937 Rolls-Royce and a 1981 DeLorean are kept. The person who owned these nice things remembered where he came from and how hard it was for him to make a living. Because of this, Dr. Paul's wealth is not just money. To love, stick with, and be devoted to your family is the real prize. Things that have been bad for his family, like the death of his grandson Adam Butch, have made him work harder to protect their future. The only thing that drove him in every deal, episode, and relationship was his desire to keep his family safe and provide for them. He left behind a lot more than money. That shows how dedicated he is to leaving his children and grandkids something that will last. A story about success, love, and staying true to your family. If you were shocked by how rich Dr. Paul was, just think about how shocking the family events must have been. In real life, this is the story of Dr. John Paul, who has done a lot in his work but also been through a lot of bad things in his personal life. In 2019, to be exact, one of the biggest letdowns happened. Adam James Butch, his grandson, died when he was only 23 years old. Adam, Dr. Paul's daughter Kathleen Paul's son, was smart, worked hard, and had a lot of promise. He went to Michigan State University and got his degree as a pharmacy tech. He was building his own life on his own. He died too young from a long-term illness, which was sad for the Paul family because he played an important role. Adam's death came as a big shock to Dr. Paul, mostly because he had spent a lot of time with his grandkids. Because he didn't know what would happen in the future, it only made him make sure his family was safe. So great of a loss made Dr. Paul think that only Adam's death gave his efforts to get rich new meaning. His work as a veterinarian and his TV show made him a lot of money, but it was more than just success. It turned into a middle ground for the safety and future of his family no matter what. Paul was still devoted to his family and making sure they had money after the death of his beloved wife. She had given him mental support and love. Besides Adam's death, the Paul family has been through other hard times that have made them stronger as a unit. Over the years, running a successful veterinary business and filming The Incredible Doctor. Paul has caused a lot of stress. Even though things have been hard, Dr. Paul has never wavered in his opinion that family is the most important thing in his life. He says a lot of the time that his love for his family and his dedication to their future drive him in both his personal and work life. For Dr. Paul, his job and wealth have always been about more than just making money. They are a heritage of love, care, and strength. These gifts are meant to help the family in all situations and during the worst times. Because Dr. Paul wants to leave his family a long legacy, he works hard to make sure he doesn't go from being rich today to being broke tomorrow. Still, Paul's success will also help other members of his family in the future. The wealth that Dr. Paul left for his family includes not only the money he gave them, but also his years of hard work, commitment, and love for his family and animals. So, when his family sees how much he has done, how much money he has made, how much wealth he has gathered, and how much life he has made for a peaceful future and the family itself, they are overwhelmed. Not only did he cry over the money he made, but also over the time he spent on them. However, he worked late, took care of the animals, and made sure the family business ran. Adam's death brought the family closer together in their sadness, and it also made Dr. Paul more determined to protect his family's future. His family is not only losing money, but also love, security, and the knowledge that he worked hard to make sure they were safe and healthy. In addition to the financial aspects, Dr. Paul's family must also deal with the emotional weight of his legacy. They have seen how dedicated he has been to veterinary medicine all his life, and how he has always been there for them. They now understand how hard he worked when they think about all the things he did. They cry for both the man they love and the money he leaves behind. When his family thinks about what Dr. Paul has done for them and for veterinary medicine, they are filled with great joy. But along with his pride comes the sad knowledge that his legacy was shaped by personal losses, sacrifices, and hard times. There is a lot of weight on Dr. Paul's wealth because he gave up everything for the people and animals he loved. His name will live on as a reminder of how humble, dedicated, and devoted he was to his family and job. Dr. Paul's story shows us how important family is and how powerful hard work can be.